The coin with which we buy our golden future is death, that of our foes brought low in battle, and of our own people sacrificed on the altar of progress. Each death is a stone lain upon my soul, a wound borne with pride by my legion, that our burden usher in the golden age that the Emperor has foreseen. The war of the Horus Heresy tarnished the dream of the Master of Mankind beyond measure. Billions perished as the once valiant angels of the Emperor tore the galaxy asunder, their blades tasting the blood of brothers and innocents alike. Yet one battle among all would pave the way for the torment of the most noble legion to their path of savagery. For today, we shall elucidate the trials of the sons of the great angel, whose insatiable thirst for blood and love for their liege proved to be their downfall. The War of Angels and Demons, the Cygnus Campaign. The mask I wear is the face of my legion, the honor of my Primarch, and the last oath of the fallen. By my pledge, it shall not be tarnished by the sin of mercy, for the angels' foes deserve none. With the dawn of the 31st millennium, humanity stood proudly as the mighty conquerors of the galaxy. The great crusade of the Emperor had by blade and bolter carved a swathe across the stars, purging the Xenos oppressors of mankind's disparate holdfasts before unifying the emancipated populaces into the fold of his Imperium. Horus Lupercal, most cherished son of the Master of Mankind, had accepted the responsibility of commanding the Great Crusade in his father's stead, the crushing weight of his burden causing this demigod to question his appointment. Though several sons of the Emperor had been considered to assume the mantle of War Master, the Lupercal of Cophonia was regardless the obvious choice. The Lion of Caliban lacked the measured diplomacy of a politician. The Lord of Ultramar already commanded his own empire of the 500 worlds within the Imperium. The Praetorian of Terra had little charisma to govern effectively, and the Gorgon of Medusa cared not for the compassion required to be beloved by the subjects of the Imperium. Yet in private, Horus saw one among his brethren as the ideal candidate for the title he now bore, his most beloved sibling, Sanguinius. Adored in equal measure by the subjects of humanity as the Lupercal, the great angel symbolized the glory of the Imperium and nobility of the Emperor's prosperous future. The only Primarch to be respected by every one of his kin, even those who lived in the shadow of his magnificent stature, could not bring themselves to resent his nature. Prior to his promotion to the rank of War Master, Horus had fought beside his brother on innumerable occasions, their campaigns won and close bond, the envy of even the most accomplished of their brothers. Yet such prosperity proved short-lived, for with the conquest of the world of Darwin, the War Master of the Imperium fell to the clutches of a long-dormant foe. Throughout the Great Crusade, the Pantheon of Chaos manipulated the skeins of fate, imparting fell knowledge and rituals to those who sought out their patronage in secret. Horus Lupercal fell to the blade known as the Anaphame, wielded by the corrupted planetary governor of Darwin, Eugen Temba, his revival imbued with the powers of chaos, hearkening a new era of darkness and slaughter. Though should the ascendant War Master of Chaos hope to achieve his ambitions to become the new ruler of humanity, one foe above all must be kept from the front lines of battle, his dearest brother, Sanguinius. The roots of the Imperium are nourished by the blood of the angels. It is by our sacrifice that its people are made strong, and by our courage, its reign made eternal. Orchestrating a web of deceit with aid from the Wordbearer's first chaplain, Erebus, Horus Lupercal displaced the most deadly legions of the Astartes to the far corners of the void. Knowing in his heart that the great angel could never turn his back on the master of mankind, Horus nonetheless could not bring himself to face his brother in battle. Already aware of the flaw of Sanguinius' bloodline, by virtue of their decades prior campaign fought as allies upon the world of Melchior, the War Master sought to turn the Blood Angels' legion to the traitor cause by manipulating their genetic curse to his advantage. The bloodlust of the Ninth Legion already emerging with increasing frequency among their ranks. With the intervention of the ruinous powers, the entirety of the Legion might be turned to fight in the name of the blood god, Khorne. Ordering Sanguinius to venture to the Cygnus Cluster within the Ultima Segmentum of the galactic Eastern Fringe, the Great Angel and Imperium at large knew not of the corruption of the War Master. Tasked with combating the Xenos species known as the Nephilim across the 7 worlds and 15 moons of the Cygnus sector, Horus informed Sanguinius that a means to cure his legion of its genetic sickness could be secured from their enemies. Having no reason to doubt his stalwart brother, the Great Angel embarked with the might of his entire legion, the promise of their emancipation from their all-encompassing rage, too great to ignore. The trap had been laid for the Ninth Legion to snare, the myriad Chaos cultists integrated within the many hive cities and manufactorums of the Cygnus sector, biding their time until the arrival of the Crimson Seraphs. The capital of Cygnus Prime, strong with the influence of Chaos, with word of Horus's imminent purge of the world of Istvan free, the cultists began to overthrow the loyal populace of the Cygnus cluster. Summoning demonic creatures to bolster their insurrection, the Cygnus sector fell to the thrall of the Immaterium, as the enslaved populace constructed fell palaces in praise of their new benefactors. By the year of 005.M31, witch cabals and demonic entities roamed the entirety of the star system, a realm of chaos in its own right, ruled by the greater demon of Slaanesh, Kairos the Perverse. Billions of souls have been slain and sacrificed, leaving only scraps of their presence as the forces of chaos once more slinked into the darkness. Soon, the Blood Angels would arrive within system, and the great gambit of the War Master to turn them to his cause would begin.
The innovation of the demon is the truest power one can wield. I relish the day I will ascend to become more than a man, to become a beast of the cosmos.
With the arrival of the Ninth Legion to the Cygnus cluster, few signs of life remained. Discovering a dozen derelict wreckages drifting beyond the fringes of the Cygnus cluster, the Blood Angels boarded the vessels in orbit of the world of Forest's gravitic shadow in order to find answers. Many were not capable of utilizing warp travel, the civilian haulers and planetary defense monitors showing signs of retreating from some unknown threat. Securing the abandoned frigate vessel, Numitor, to be docked within the Blood Angels Gloriana-class flagship, the Red Tier, every labor serf of the Voidcraft would be forbidden to enter the docking bay, which housed this Voidcraft. Summoning the apothecaries of the Legion, including the junior Medicae, Meros, the Blood Angels observed the retrieved bodies of the deceased crewmen of the Numitor. Taking no chance for possible biohazard contamination, the Astartes donned full suits of power armor as they examined the 4 coffins within the bowels of the Voidcraft. Finding the contents of the coffins to contain corpses whose veins contained thick, oily vitae, signs of decay, shriveled flesh, and no bones within their form. Misshapen bags of flesh and skin alone, none among the medical corps of the Legion could ascertain any cause for such a strange malady, for no signs of the removal of the bones of the corpses could be found. Ordered by First Captain Raldoron to never share their findings with the crew of the Red Tier, nor their Astartes brethren, the findings of the investigators of the remaining abandoned Voidcraft bore no further insight. Unsettled by his men's findings, Sanguinius ordered a task force of his men to deploy upon the surface of Cygnus 6 to find signs of the inhabitants of the Hive City of Holst. Accompanied by a detachment of free word-bearer Astartes seconded to their ranks, Apothecary Meros, Librarian Makani Kano, and other Blood Angels under the command of Sergeant Cassiel descended to the Hive World aboard a Stormbird gunship. Their pilot, overcome with visions of nightmarish proportions, drew his weapon against his servitor aides and co-pilots, forcing Meros to enact a crash landing of their vessel. Exploring the uninhabited Hive City with no means to communicate with the Legion in orbit, during their investigation of the outer wards of Holst Prime, gunfire sounded. Brother Zagan took point, disappearing through a sinkhole within a habitat building, leaving only a discharged Umbra Ferox pattern bolter where he once stood. As their investigation progressed, Captain Uan Harox and his word-bearers slipped away unnoticed, their disappearance catching the Blood Angels off guard as enemy contacts opened fire. Evading the ambush and relocating the word-bearers, Meros found one of their slain, the same consistency of oily black blood found prior, coating his slate-grey ceramite. Realizing the blood to be the word-bearer's own, Meros' ministrations would be interrupted by Captain Harox, the Blood Angels concluding that they must return to the Legion to relay their strange findings. Attempting to escape Holst Prime, the Astartes were beset by heretical metallic constructs, their position surrounded and seemingly fated to be overrun. Yet with the timely intervention of the captain of the 5th Company, Nasir Amit, the Blood Angels rescued a handful of civilian survivors before departing Cygnus 6. Listening to the reports of his men, Sanguinius brooked no chance for this fell planet to continue to spread its corrupting influence, ordering exterminatus of its surface using cyclonic torpedoes. The planet releasing a tortured scream as it perished. Not even the void of space could diminish the blood-curdling death knell of this twisted bastion of evil.
Our sin was to reach too far, too quickly. We played at being gods, and in our fumbling awoke an older, darker power.
Receiving the final communication of the dispatched Blood Angel Voidcraft, Helios, to be lost with all hands by unknown circumstance, Sanguinius ordered the fleet to pass into the heart of the Cygnus cluster on full battle alert. Some malign influence had been assaulting the minds of their mortal crewmen since their arrival within system, the Blood Angels resisting its malevolent influence due to their enhanced physique and mental fortitude. Yet should the mortals of the fleet fall, their ability to maintain its function would be imperiled, for hundreds of reports of self-destruction and infighting depleted their effectiveness of their duties. Recovering survivors from the crashed frigate Stark Dagger upon the agri-world of Cygnus 5, the mortals expressed their intent to flee from the core worlds of the system in order to escape the slaughter to Captain Nakia of the 24th Company. Informing Captain Nakia of the horrors which had beset them, the Blood Angels attempted to extract the survivors from the planet, losing several of their number during the skirmish. Debriefing Sanguinius and his senior officers on his return to the Red Tier, Nakia described the demonic entities which he had fought, noting how each that had been slain melted into toxic residue, unable to be retrieved for study. Every boneless corpse on the surface of Cygnus 5 matched those first found aboard the Numitor, the survivors of the Agri-world confirming their own accounts to Captain Nakia's description of the demons which beset the system. Wary of such tall tales, many Blood Angels surmised such fanciful accounts must be embellishments of chemically distorted views of more mundane foes. Yet those who cited the so-called towering Bloodthirster of Cygnus and second strange general of the Damned insisted that their observations bore clarity. Citing the collapse of the Cygnus government to be caused by a man named Bruja, this impostor of the Imperium's ruling class had performed strange magics and summoned beings from the warp in order to overthrow the mortal populace. Laying siege to the world of Cygnus 3, known by the populace as Cygnus Prime, despite records describing 2 moons to orbit its surface, the planet bore no planetoids. Their disappearance unaccounted for and seemingly impossible, the lack of orbital shipyards, barracks, and defense systems had allowed for the Cygnus defense forces to be torn apart, the debris of their wreckages shrouding the orbit of Cygnus Prime. Coated in a jagged shell of shattered hulls, radiation clouds, and plasma fire, no void craft smaller than a warship could hope to escape nor penetrate this barbed shoal. Tens of thousands of corpses littered the void, bloated and icy in the vacuum of space, as the Blood Angels fleet began their approach to the surface of the planet. Twisted dolmens, discs, and spirals, constructed with the flesh and blood of millions, littering their path. The grotesque spectacle stoking anger within the hearts of the great angel and his sons. The boneless sacks of oily blood and tissue, the only trace of those that had mutilated this once prosperous world. Signs of an 8-pointed star burned upon the surface, which could be observed. Everywhere a monument to some occult belief of terrible power. Yet as the Ninth Legion beheld the carnage left in the wake of the servants of chaos, the time for the ruinous powers had come to strike.
In blood we find truth. In the blood we shed in battle is the truth of our conviction, and in turn, the blood of our foe is the truth of our destiny. Our truth is written in blood.
Suddenly, and without warning, fell energies coursed through the minds of the psychically sensitive mortal crewmen of the Blood Angels fleet. Navigators and astropaths convulsed and died, the screams of those that survived, music to the ears of the ruinous pantheon. A psychic scream boomed from Cygnus Prime, assaulting the senses of those who bore witness to its terrible sound, penetrating the adamantium hulls of the fleet and overwhelming the mortal crewmen with a collective cry of despair. Some died of shock, others heart attacks, and more still turned their knives and lasguns against themselves. The clarion call of chaos marking all irrevocably, even should they endure its tormenting influence. The forces of chaos no longer hid within the shadows. This was a call to arms and a challenge to cross swords with the Sons of the Angel. Servitors stumbled into the chamber of the Great Angel, vomiting blood and collapsing into a contorted pile of brass and flesh. Demanding the entity which had manipulated their forms to reveal itself, the servitor's flesh assembled into a 4-armed goat-headed creature, Kairos the Perverse. Declaring itself as the ruler of the Cygnus cluster, the Master of Pleasure challenged Sanguinius to combat his forces on the surface of Cygnus Prime, before abandoning his possessed puppets to clatter lifeless to the ground. Librarians of the Legion erected psychic barriers to stave off the deadly psychic scream, as the senior officers of the Ninth planned their assault to the surface of the planet. Mutated Voidcraft emerged from the shroud of wreckage in orbit of Cygnus Prime, firing upon the Blood Angels fleet as signs of otherworldly energies lit up the sensors of the flotilla. The Red Tier opened fire, hailing the seconded Wordbearers' vessels to join its own warships to face the foe. At the moment of most direst need, the Wordbearers retreated from battle, as a chaos-corrupted warship collided with Sanguinius' flagship. Cygnus-I mutants and warp-spawned horrors breached the hull of the ship, their hasty invasion repelled by the Blood Angels as they cast their forms into the void of space by decompressing their entry point. Thralls of the ruinous powers confronted Admiral Athene Ducade upon the command deck of the flagship. Their attempt to wrestle control of the Red Tier ended by her las pistols as the Admiral gunned down every member of her possessed bridge crew. Realizing that she herself had been driven mad by the corrupting influence of chaos, Ducade set a course for the surface of Cygnus Prime, and as her last act, destroyed her command console and fired one last las round into her heart. Nothing could stop the Red Tier from colliding with the surface of Cygnus Prime as it plunged through orbit. Sanguinius ordering his men to rally within the heavily fortified core of the Voidcraft as they hurtled to the surface. Slamming into the dead wastes of Cygnus Prime, The Red Tier survived its catastrophic collision, the Tech Marines and surviving labor serfs wasting no time in repairing vital functions and transforming the fallen starship into a fortress. The full might of the Blood Angels aboard were ready to seek retribution against their duplicitous foes. Though we may feel as if we die alone, remember that we carry within our veins the blood of our father and of the Emperor. With them in our hearts, we are never alone in the galaxy, nor can we die in vain. As the forces of the ruinous powers amassed within the ash waste of Cygnus Prime, the Great Angel led his Crimson Army of 120,000 strong to war. Swearing an oath to slay Kyrus the Perverse and all who swore fealty to it, Sanguinius and his sons unleashed their devastating might against the cultists of chaos. Besieging the palace constructed with the pilfered bones of the murdered Cygnus I populace, the Cathedral of the Mark, the Blood Angels tore through the ranks of heretics and demons with unbridled fury. Thousands fell within minutes as the Ninth Legion's blades liberated their blood from their flesh. The battlefield known forevermore as the Plains of the Damned, as the soil drank the vitae of the sundered pawns of chaos. For while the might of the Blood Angels could not be bested by mortals, nor these lesser demons of the ruinous powers, their advance stalled with the intervention of the Bloodthirster of Cygnus Prime, Ka'Bandha. Revealing Horus's treachery to the Great Angel, the greater demon of Khorne preyed on the rage of Sanguinius as the two dueled. Tearing a wound through the Bloodthirster's chest with the blade in carmine, Ka'Bandha roared with agony as he struck the legs of the Great Angel with his whip, striking Sanguinius to the ground with the flat of his axe, momentarily stunning him. Capitalizing on the moment of the Great Angel's vulnerability, the General of Cygnus carved swathes through the Blood Angel's ranks, his gargantuan axe blows killing 500 Astartes in mere moments. The collective death of so many sons of the Angel, combined with the presence of chaos, sent waves of psychic backlash against Sanguinius, the trauma causing the Primarch to slip into unconsciousness. Witnessing the fall of their gene sire, the Blood Angels let go of their restraint of their gene curse, the Red First, allowing its call for bloodshed and mayhem to consume their sanity. The first step to corrupt the Ninth Legion had been achieved, for unless the forces of chaos were routed from Cygnus Prime, their bloodlust would not relent, their disciplined battle lines collapsing as they transformed into rabid monsters. Yet one quality had been overlooked by the greater demon of Khorne, which would supersede their wanton thirst for blood: their love for their liege lord. The killing frenzy bolstered their combat effectiveness against the general of Cygnus Prime's armies, never turning on their own forces due to their unbreakable shared bond as descendants of the Great Angel. Instinct drove the disorganized masses of Astartes that had surrendered to their cravings, striking key outposts as bloodletters and demonettes attempted to stave off their advance. Yet among the ranks of the Ninth Legion, a select few stoic warriors refused to give in to their bloodlust, most notably their first captain Raldoron, Apothecary Meros, Archaean Eli Janus of the 202nd Company, and Aster Crone of the 94th Company. Whilst Janus and his men bought time through a valiant last stand, and the veteran of the Revenant Legion of their past struck key positions across the front lines, Raldoron ordered his own strike force to infiltrate the Cathedral of the Mark. As Meros fought alongside his battle brothers within the Basilica, librarian Makani Kano gathered the kinsmen of his creed as they attempted to combine their psychic might to awaken Sanguinius as Raldoron's men defended their position. Sacrificing their lives to awaken their gene-sire, Makani Kano alone survived his ordeal as his Primarch bid his son to rest as he took to the field once more. Confronting Ka'Bandha and Kyrus within the heart of the Cathedral of the Mark, the Great Angel banished the champion of Khorne and discovered the means which had harnessed the genetic flaw of his bloodline. Woe betide any who make compacts with the foulest forces of the warp. For the chance of a moment's triumph, they sell their souls hereafter unto an eternity of torment. Upon the planet designated 14020, colloquially known by the wider Imperium as Murder, Captain Tagus of the Blood Angels 111th Company had been lost as missing in action. Captured by the first chaplain of the Wordbearers Legion, Erebus, the half-dead body of the venerated captain would fuel a psychic device constructed to harness the innate rage of the 9th Legion, the Ragefire. Acting as a conduit of all-consuming rage, the fell sorceries used to construct such a device had enhanced the instability of the floor to all within its proximity. Hoping that the Blood Angels would abandon their innate nobility, learn for example from their glorious Genesire, the call to tread the scarlet path of the Blood God, Khorne, had, regardless of Erebus' schemes, failed. Bested in combat and at the mercy of the Great Angel, Kyrus, as a last act of desperation, offered Sanguinius a means to cure his afflicted sons. Should the Great Angel submit himself to the Ragefire in the place of Captain Tagus, his sacrifice would absolve the Red First from his genetic line. His adoration for his sons beyond measure and compassion boundless, Sanguinius contemplated the demon's offer until finally accepting its terms. Yet before the Great Angel could sacrifice himself to the device, Junior Medicae Meros hurled himself into its crystalline lattice. Acting on the prior warning from the Sergeant of the Far Future, Rathan, during his blood sleep following an injury inflicted by the Dark Eldar of Nartaba Octus. Forewarned by Rathan that Sanguinius must face the War Master in battle and never pledge himself to the cause of chaos, Meros tore his progenoid glands from his chest and hurled them to his Genesire. Their destiny to one day be implanted into his long-distant battle brother. Acting a moment too late to save his son from his fate, Sanguinius caught the last enduring remnant of his heroic son and witnessed Meros' body become consumed by the vortex within the Ragefire. Possessed by a chosen demon of the Blood God, the Red Angel stood in place of its host, refusing to surrender what remained of the Junior Medicae, as the Great Angel proclaimed that through Meros' valor, the cause of the demon's masters had proven false. Vowing to never allow his sacrifice to be in vain, Sanguinius swore to one day free him from the Red Angel's embrace. Once you burned our churches, our places of power, and called us fools. Now the wheel had turned. You have unleashed that which we sought to appease, and you bring me up from the darkness of your prison in search of weapons. I will not aid you, for I know the foe you face, and the hell they will bring to you brings me only joy. As the Red Angel retreated into the warp, sanity returned to the Astartes of the Blood Angels. Casting Kyrus the Perverse into the roiling tides of the Immaterium with his blade, the Great Angel watched as his sons purged the remaining heretics whose presence sullied the soil of this ravaged world. Ordering his men to remove all trace of their involvement within the Cygnus system, before finally laying to rest the bones of the billions of slain mortals with the destruction of the Cathedral of the Mark. Gathering every fallen Astartes, shattered blade, unsalvageable vehicle, and fragment of broken ceramite, Sanguinius etched within the Book of Hours that never again would the sons of Sanguinius ever tread within this defiled sector of space. No gravestones nor monuments would be raised, the earth of these blighted worlds unfit to harbour the bodies nor glories of any who fought upon their surfaces. The Blood Angels would return their 100 slain to Baal, their bodies to be interred within the slopes of Mount Seraph, as each broken Voidcraft would be repaired and rearmed within numerous Imperial star docks to fight once again. Declaring the Cygnus cluster as Morte Perpetua, or Forever Dead, automated beacons and warning buoys lined its perimeter, demanding that all ships turn back from ever entering its domain. Destined to remain lifeless and empty until its suns exhausted their last traces of heat, with none to witness their passing, the stain upon the Ninth Legion's otherwise glorious war records had jaded many within their ranks. The character of the Great Angel and his men turning ever more morose with time, the wounds inflicted upon the Blood Angels during Cygnus Prime could never be healed. Civil war had begun to ravage the Imperium, and the Ninth Legion were far from its most crucial war zones. Their betrayal by the man who their liege adored more than any living soul, a truly bitter truth to swallow. Over 10,000 Blood Angels had perished, and the majority of its mortal crew lay dead. Yet for all the losses incurred by the Ninth Legion, Cygnus Prime marked the first victory of the Loyalist offensive, a loss which the War Master would not accept lightly. The traitors had failed to turn the Ninth Legion to their cause, and Task Force Yegefton, consisting of Sons of Horus, Night Lords, and World Eaters Astartes, could not prevent their escape from the Cygnus cluster. By attempting to hide the genetic curse from the Imperium and his own men, the Great Angel's laxity had invited disaster. Those he held as the truest of allies had exploited his weakness for their own malign ambitions, and now his legion must wrestle with the widespread knowledge of their savage nature. For only time would tell how deep their flaw would fester within the bloodline of Sanguinius, and little would its kinsmen know that soon their curses would be twofold. You have met them, yes? This Emperor's deadly new toys? His mutilated half-men and his soulless women, his gilded homunculi and blinded warp speakers. Do you think them human then? Are they any less monstrous for a shape familiar to the eye? I think not. All this devilry of genecraft and forbidden alchemy, do you think it's somehow clean simply because it is worked by your self-effacing godhead in denial? Because your glamour-cloaked tyrant said it is so? And what ancient, broken vault or bloody laboratory prison did he, most monstrous of all, spring from? Or do you yet believe his whispered lies of immortality and pregenesis? You would condemn me for my sins of reason and invention, but it is my eyes which see clearly you wish to blind. I damn you all to the future hell which you already run to embrace like a lover. This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. It is perhaps among the greatest tragedies of the history of the Imperium that the weakness of the Great Angel would be exploited by his most cherished friend. Brotherhood, promises, and oaths can be broken within moments, yet they take a lifetime to preserve. And should you confide in others, you must be careful in who you place trust. Be mindful of the secrets you harbor, for it is rare for anything to remain hidden for long, and transparency is often the antidote for the poison of deception. And should you withhold knowledge that may harm those you care for, know that the longer it is withheld, the more dangerous it will become.